Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, depending on which part of this beautiful country that you're in. You're watching Rebel Roundup. I'm your host, Sheila Gunn Reid. My friend David Menzies is off for the next 2 weeks. I'm joined by my friend, our managing editor, Tamara Ugolini. Tamara, how's it going?
Hey, Sheila. Well, what a loaded question, given the, as David Menzies would say, the jam-packed sausage of news coverage that we have to get to on this manic Monday. But all things aside, doing well considering the tumultuous times we're experiencing here on the political landscape in Canada and North America. What about you over there on the west side?
Uh, I think we're going to do better than the rest of the country, and somebody's got to, because you people in the rest of the country want nice things, and somebody's got to pay for them. But it is bitterly cold, so I'm really excited for that hike in the carbon tax coming April 1st. It's so cold today; the school buses didn't run, so I guess my car did. I had to drive everybody to school, but yeah, it's a wild time to be alive. It's, as you alluded to, tariff mania today, I think, is what we're
Yes.
going to talk about on the show today. The different responses from the different premiers, ranging from confrontational, adversarial, and superheated, and asking for trouble, to the more measured approach coming out of Alberta. So we'll talk about that all today. Doug Ford had an early morning, early, I guess, for me. I think it was 7:30 for me, press conference. And we'll go through that together, because these people obviously have no interest in taking the heat down for some reason. Well, I think I know what that reason is, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But let's tell everybody what we're doing today. So this is the Rebel Roundup. It's usually on the first work day of the week, as if there is no work, like every day is a work day at Rebel News. But it's usually on the first work day of the week, so the Monday or whatever, depending on if there's a holiday. Wednesdays now and Fridays, wherein we discuss the news of the day completely unscripted and as it comes. So if you want to get involved in the show and you are still sticking it out over there on YouTube, which is a censorship platform, might I suggest you migrate your eyeballs over to a platform that doesn't care so much about your politics, and that is Rumble. It's a great free speech platform where Rebel News is still monetized. And because we're still monetized over there, you can support our work through a paid chat on Rumble. It's called a Rumble Rant. If it's over the $5 US cutoff, it's mandatory. We got to read it on air, so make it good. But we frequently read the chats that fall under that $5 US cutoff, and even the free chats if they're witty or insightful or thoughtful or sometimes even critical. We'll take the constructive criticism too. So I think that's it. Unless I've forgotten something, Tamara, your premier is really just hell bent on destroying your economy, isn't he?
I think that is becoming more and more clear as time goes on. He also just, as you know, David Menzies and I have chatted about before on the live streams, textbook name flip flop Ford, and he doesn't
Yeah.
know whether he's coming or going. He seems to say all of these, these crazy things, and then he backpedals on it, or he switches directions entirely. That's been a pretty near constant over the last 5 years of keeping a closer watch and eye on Premier Doug Ford here in, as I call it, on terrible. But yeah, so he has done everything in response to these tariff threats that are now becoming reality from President Donald Trump, to, first saying things like, we're going to cut off US energy supplies just completely as a retaliatory measure. I think that was about 3-4 weeks ago. He started with that
Yeah.
kind of rhetoric, and then he backpedaled on that, said, oh, we're just going to take some of the bourbon, the US bourbon, off the shelves. And now he is saying things that Canadians have been advocating for years. Why haven't we been utilizing our natural resources, oil and gas sector, and building pipelines this whole time? I mean, you
Yeah.
cannot keep up with the amount of times that Premier Ford flip-flops and backpedals and switches directions. I mean, now he's called an election in the middle of this disastrous trade war that we have, unprecedented in my time, with our closest ally and trade partner, the United States. And what does majority government Doug Ford do? Well, he calls a snap election under the guise of needing a stronger mandate. So, Ford, I think, doesn't know what is going on, and he's just throwing everything out at the wall to see what will stick.
Yeah, it's exactly like what Justin Trudeau did in 2021, right? Call a snap election because we need a mandate to deal with the crisis. And the only election we actually want and need is the one that will get rid of Justin Trudeau, who apparently could not even get a phone call in to President Trump before the tariffs came. I think he had one, as Ezra mentioned in the morning staff meeting, one this morning, like after the tariffs are announced. And then after we retaliate with tariffs, he decides, well, maybe I should talk to President Trump. But we'll get to that in a second. Let's get to this first clip. Trump says tariffs could increase on Canada if the Trudeau government takes retaliatory measures. I mean, again, this is something Trump warned us about. He said, do these things, you'll avoid the tariffs, or retaliate with tariffs and I will crush you further. Anyways, let's watch this and I'll tell you why we're in for a world of hurt.
Are you planning to increase the tariffs against Canada?
Well, it could happen. If they do anything, we will. Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it. I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada. And something's going to happen there. But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want. Mexico, we've had very good talks with them. And this is retaliatory. This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada. And we're not going to allow that.
We're in trouble. We're in big, bad trouble. And, as Ezra rightly pointed out, the trade surplus is a direct result of Canada's oil and gas. And as McDonald Laurier poll results from last week show, a lot of Americans have a lot of misconceptions about where their foreign oil comes from. The majority of Americans think their foreign sourced oil comes from Saudi Arabia, not from Canada. And that's a failing of the Trudeau government and all the big oil and gas producers who have all the money to do the education campaigns on this issue. They didn't do anything for 10 years to remind people like, hey, we're your friendly neighbor and you're worried about energy security and you don't want to buy it from the bad guys of the world. And you don't want to send us into the loving arms of China as a place to sell our oil and gas. Wouldn't you rather have it from us? You need to also replace the strategic reserve that Biden released into the world to artificially deflate the cost of oil and gas in the United States. You might want to fill that back up. But we're in for a world of hurt. And this is why. Because the Texas economy, one state, albeit a big boy, their entire economy is larger than that of Canada's. So that shows you the level of pain Trump can inflict on us, rightly or wrongly. He can inflict just an absolute level of hurt like we have never seen because they're 10 times larger than us, easily.
Yeah, I was reading this morning that Canada's GDP, we export approximately 22% of our gross domestic product into the United States versus I think it was 1.2% that they give back to us. I mean, this definitely gives the United States a much higher a hierarchy of leverage power against Canada when we depend on that market trade relationship for our GDP and that stability in our economy. And Canada's economy is already on rocky ground. These tariffs are going to do what the Trump administration has signed executive orders to do. They want to drive business, drive innovation, drive manufacturing back into the US economy. They want to stop their dependency on foreign imports and make America great again, make that their home base, having that strong capacity once again to be independent, both energy, manufacturing, all goods and services. And so this is part of Trump's larger administrative strategy to bring that back home into the United States, build the economy, build better jobs. And all we see from our supposed leaders, which Trump in that clip says explicitly, I don't agree with the leadership of Canada. And obviously, the vast majority of Canadians don't either. And so, despite all of that, and the fact that we have a frozen parliamentary system, the outgoing lame duck Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has resigned from his post, but is still supposed to be or supposedly leading this Team Canada approach, which are just counter threatening tariffs back onto the US. And despite all of that, what Canadians really want to see is that trade partnership not be completely tattered by this nonsense of doing dollar for dollar tariffs when the Canadian dollar, I think, is trading at what, 3/4 of the US dollar? Where do they think we're getting this leverage power from? It's crazy.
We're at 2/3. The dollar took just a harsh tumble today. Now's a good time to buy oil and gas stocks if you're into that sort of stuff. They're tumbling, but they'll pick back up. That's my little free advice to everybody. But if you got some money to play with, buy a few stocks today, because things are tumbling. But we've just seen on the flip side, the Mexicans who Trump has been like, these are bad hombres. The Mexican government is not sending us their best. Like he has said that for years. Mm-hmm. This shows how poisoned the relationship is between Trudeau and Trump, because Mexico, that Trump has been very hard with, very critical of, they just struck a deal with Trump this morning to avoid tariffs, at least for the time being. So Trump says, I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she has agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers to the border separating Mexico and the United States. Now, Canada could never do this because we don't have, I don't think, that many deployment ready soldiers. And that's part of the problem here that Trump has with us. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for a month period during which we will have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who I believe could be convinced to alleviate some of the pain on the Canadian economy. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick. And Howard Lutnick is a bit of an Alberta fan. So if we could just get some sort of concessions out of Trudeau, we could maybe start picking away at things, but I just don't think we'll see it. And high-level representatives from Mexico, we will attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. So that was posted originally on Truth Social. So that should tell you how poisonous the Trudeau government has been to Trump, because Trump was willing to pause the tariffs on Mexico while they did something about their border problem and their fentanyl problem. Trudeau just refuses to acknowledge there's even a problem here. In his 2.5 hours late statement to the media on Saturday night, he said our border is secure and it's no big deal. And we know that's not true. There's so many people coming across our border that it has completely collapsed our immigration system. It takes years to get an immigration review board hearing once you waltz into the country and claim refugee status. So Anyway, that
Not
just
to mention the fact that I think there's about 150,000 illegal refugees who were claiming refugee status,
yes.
who were denied, that the government just lost.
No, we don't know where they are. They're just running amok. Yeah.
And so they're crossing the border. Where do you think that they're headed? To the land of greater certainty. But as this message came out with Mexico, and that diplomacy and those negotiations have been successful and fruitful to both countries, right? Because this is a benefit to both Mexico and the United States if they can reach an agreement here to move forward in a way that benefits both the countries. Now we have an official opposition leader, as though we now, I guess, have some form of an opposition in Canada once again. You have Pierre Poilievre taking to X, saying that we must take back control of the border and save Canada-US trade. He's now kind of separating from that Team Canada retaliatory approach and saying we must send Canadian forces, troops, helicopters, and surveillance to the border now. So exactly what Danielle Smith has been doing for the better part of a month. Add at least 2,000 border agents and extend the CBSA powers along the entire border, not just crossing. Again, Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, has called for a border czar to do just that because she no longer trusts the CBSA or the RCMP to fulfill their mandate of securing our borders and keeping Canadians safe. I mean, they've had that mandate since the beginning of the country, and they haven't been able to uphold that over the last few years. It's becoming more and more prevalent. It's becoming more and more exposed. Canadians are starting to see things the way that they really are. And so, this is basically taking Danielle Smith's approach and trying to shoehorn it into this Team Canada approach with Pierre Poilievre. And the third thing he's saying is install high-powered scanners, border surveillance towers, and truck-mounted drone systems to spot border incursions. I mean, this is literally what Danielle Smith has been doing for almost 6 weeks.
Yes. Yes, and it's actually something for people who say that, oh, this is just in response to Trump's threats. It's been months and months in the works because those sheriffs had to receive specialized training. They had to ramp up equipment and training. And so it's been like 6 months of a federal or a provincial government focus on doing the federal government's job. And initially it was done as a way to combat human trafficking and drug trafficking because we have not just a recovery focused approach in Alberta, but like a zero tolerance for fentanyl, unlike the federal government who just wants to give out hard drugs. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Do we not think for a second that the safe supply from British Columbia is not ending up on the streets of Seattle? Right? Like, I imagine the Americans are quite irritated that our government is issuing the poisons which kills Americans.
All funded by us, the taxpayer. They're literally putting them in vending machines and giving them out to kids on the streets in front of hospitals. I mean, this idea that there's safer supply. And the thing that really gets me with all of these trade tariffs and the counter threats is that everyday average Canadians have been asking and calling on and demanding the government do these things for years. We've been saying, there's a crime wave across the country. We need to bring back bail reform. We need to change the federal judicial system, the catch and release, all of these woke, ridiculous implementations that the Justin Trudeau Liberals have put onto our criminal justice system has just led to more crime and chaos in the streets, compounded with the drug crisis, this idea that there is safer supply of deadly, extremely toxic, and highly addictive opioid synthetic drugs. And then, of course, we have this porous border issue where we've just opened the floodgates to record immigration numbers and have done away with the usual checks and balances to make sure that those people are properly assimilating into Canada as a country. Instead, we've just lost a bunch of the ones who didn't actually get refugee status because, as you mentioned, it's taken so long and there's such a backlog because we don't have any systems in place to bring those checks and balances and restore them back to, pre-2020 and pre-Justin Trudeau levels. So this is nothing new to any Canadians who have been paying attention the last several years under the reign of terror, as I would like to call it, of the Justin Trudeau Liberals. But now Trump's just really shining a spotlight on those things that have been ignored by the political class for years and years and years. And it's left Canadians feeling completely sidelined.
Right. Like, as you point out, this is the right thing to do for Canadians. It has been the right thing to do for Canadians for years, at least going back to 2017 when Justin Trudeau sent that tweet saying, "Welcome to Canada," when Trump was busy deporting people from 5 failed states. And he called it the mainstream media called it the Muslim ban, but it was just from failed states where you couldn't verify anybody's identities. He put a pause on migration from there, and Justin Trudeau said, "Oh, really? Well, welcome to Canada." That one tweet caused a collapse in our immigration system. And now, as Trump starts mass deportations of illegals in his country, something he was elected to do, whether you like it or not, his concern is, I'm going to deport them. They're going to go to Canada, go to Pearson Airport, where you could just claim refugee status now, and then wander back across the border. So the impetus is on us to make sure that these people just don't, it's like that Simpsons meme where Moe is throwing Barney out the front door and he walks in the back door. That's what Trump is worried about a little bit. We've got this interesting clip from the Justin Trudeau presser on Saturday night. And this I found slightly stomach churning given Justin Trudeau's treatment of the people who did many of these things. So let's just go into this. He's standing on someone else's shoulders as if he and his government did it.
From the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of the Korean Peninsula, from the fields of Flanders to the streets of Kandahar, we have fought and died alongside you. During your darkest hours, during the Iranian hostage crisis, those 444 days we worked around the clock from our embassy to get your innocent compatriots home. During the summer of 2005, when Hurricane Katrina ravaged your great city of New Orleans, or mere weeks ago, when we sent water bombers to tackle the wildfires in California. During the day the world stood still, September 11th, 2001, when we provided refuge to stranded passengers and planes, we were always there, standing with you, grieving with you, the American people. Together, we've built the most successful economic, military, and security partnership the world has ever seen. A relationship that has been the envy of the world. Yes, we've had our differences in the past, but we've always found a way to get past them. As I've said before, if President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us.
Right off the bat, I feel like this is a discussion between a husband and a wife. This is textbook gaslighting. Don't forget all these times that we stood together and we were unwavering and we were strong, and let's forget the bad times and let's just focus on all the times we weathered the storm and came out on the other side successful and strong. This is such a weird way to approach the conversation after the White House press secretary called Trudeau, and I think that was on Friday or sometime maybe over the weekend. She called out Trudeau and said maybe before he runs to the media slinging his rhetoric around, he should just pick up the phone and give President Trump a call. And then you have him up here on the podium with gaslighting the US as though, like, don't forget all of our history and all of our strong ties. And meanwhile, back when he was actually with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago, Trump explicitly said, what do you think if I implement 25% tariffs on Canada? And Trudeau acknowledged that it would crush the country. Like that, this isn't the makings of a strong leader. I mean, when does this guy go away? Because he's resigned from being prime minister. He's prorogued parliament. Why is he still up here leading the charge? I don't understand.
But yeah, it was, by the way, it was the provinces that sent the help to California. It was Alberta that sent, I think, 30 some odd wildland firefighters. Another province sent water bombers. The provinces did that. You know, Alberta, the province you want to punish all the time, you want us to burn ourselves down to heat the rest of you. We did that. We deployed those specialized wildland firefighters. And I think they actually went to Bakersfield, where there's a large oil and gas field, because our wildland firefighters are used to fighting fires around oil and gas installations. That's not something Justin Trudeau would know about, though. And the other thing that I found quite disgusting was he's standing on the backs of our veterans to make the case for why we are good neighbors to the United States. But those are the same people that Justin Trudeau said was asking for more than he was willing to give them. So he wants the Americans to appreciate their service and sacrifice, when we know Justin Trudeau himself does not appreciate their service and sacrifice, because he is a horrible, despicable man who just won't go away. Speaking of horrible, despicable people who just won't go away, we've got Chrystia Freeland, Justin Trudeau's former right-hand woman, one of two WEF choices to lead Canada going forward. She says, Canadians are, guys, we're super hurt. We're so super hurt, and we can't even turn to Disney Plus because we canceled it to fight inflation. And you guys just cut it out. So let's watch this.
Americans have to understand how hurt and frankly how furious Canadians are. Our sovereignty is being challenged. And so, yeah, regular Canadians across the country are coming up with ways to stand for Canada, to fight for Canada, to defend Canada, but mostly to say to our American neighbors, guys, just cut it out. Just stop it. This is a terrible idea. And yes, we are going to use all the tools in our toolbox. You mentioned a little bit earlier how the United States depends on China, critical minerals and metals that you need for semiconductors, that you need to build electric vehicles. Well, guess who also produces those? Canada. You depend on us for a lot, and we are happy to work together, but it's got to be a two-way street.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So then we have Chrystia Freeland with her paternalistic rhetoric being like,
Yeah,
just cut it out, guys.
just cut it out, you guys.
She's like, it's like fighting children. She's being the parent
Yeah.
of a pair of fighting children who just won't stop duking it out. And then we have Trudeau up there, you know, inferring that this is like some sort of romantic relationship. Don't forget that we had each other's backs all these years.
Remember when I bought you those flowers that time after I gave you a black eye? Yeah, that's what it felt like.
I cannot believe that these are the individuals who were elected to lead the country, because this it all reeks of gaslighting. And don't forget, the treating this as though it's a romantic, weird relationship, paternalistic, cut it out, everyone, and I'll be your parent and tell you what to say and do next, is exactly why everybody dislikes the Liberals and why they are on their way out, why their polling numbers are absolutely abysmal. And I think that Trump is obviously shining a light on all of this and the way that these people are acting. I don't know how everyone isn't seeing through this and calling out this absurd conduct by the Justin Trudeau Liberals and Chrystia Freeland. I can't believe you have a whole entire team and staff behind you who develop your speeches and develop your talking points, and this is the best they could come up with. This is craziness.
I've seen the people behind Freeland and Trudeau and their performances during the Foreign Interference Commission. So I'm actually not surprised. Actually, this is better than I thought that they could come up with. But there's a reason Trump and his people cannot stand Chrystia Freeland. And you just saw it right there. She's condescending. She talks down to you like we're a bunch of kindergartners. When we're the ones that understand economics and our household economics a lot better than she does. And yet she, this crazy lady, was in charge of the entire Canadian economy. You know what? It's by the grace of God, things are not even worse in this country. Let's get to this quick chat, and then we'll do the Rumble ad read, hit a break, and then we'll come back to the grown-ups in the room having a discussion about what should be done. So we've got Gray Donk, gives us $10. Thank you very much. Says, an American first president and a Canada first prime minister. Interesting you use that phrase because Poilievre used that phrase today. Can easily work out a security trade agreement beneficial to both parties if their priority is their people. Yeah, I think there's no possible way that there's an end to this while the Liberals are in charge because the Trump administration just absolutely despises them. And I think the feeling is mutual and the Liberals won't shut up about it. So we've got ad read from our friends at Rumble. It's from Rumble Premium. It's a sponsorship that's incredibly important to the survival of the company of Rumble, but also us here at Rebel News, because as you know, we are currently demonetized by the censorship platform of YouTube. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they felt pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us here at Rebel News a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France, and they're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers because they don't get much of it. Watching our show right now, what you're doing right now, is the most they can really ask from you. But if you believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble is by joining Rumble Premium. It's real easy. Just cancel your YouTube Premium and just apply it to Rumble. Support the people who support your right to speak your mind. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble's offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium. Use the promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium. And if you don't have the means, and I understand why, I mean, if you're Canadian, Justin Trudeau's in charge. We're just happy if you watch us on Rumble. And also, if you could do a little something for us, share the stream, share our videos, help us get around that intense internet censorship. If you know somebody who you think would enjoy our work or be thought-provoked by our work, just send them the link. Put it in an email, send them a link, send them a text message. Introduce us to new people if you wouldn't mind. It's free, and boy, it would help us spread the good word of conservatism. I think that's it. Olivia, do we have a Rebel ad? Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Canadians know the national anthem. They stand in silence to remember those who died for this country. But not every Canadian knows their rights and freedoms. The Freedom Passport will change that. It looks and feels like a Canadian passport, but contains the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms in a portable, easy-to-read format. The Freedom Passport. Order one for yourself and for all the freedom lovers that you love at freedompassport.ca.
All right, that was a quick ad. I hardly had time to send some text messages back. Let's get into the grown-ups in the room. Poilievre saying the things that we can do internally immediately right now to make things better. Yes? No? Olivia.
Do we have that clip from Poilievre saying that we need a new trading partner? There it is. We'll
there
play
we
this
go.
one.
Thank
new
you.
Tariffs on Canada's economy. It is reckless to remain so helplessly dependent on just one export market, the United States. Canada must also look to sell to other countries, and I've found just the one. It is a country that needs Canada's products, and it sells things that we benefit from buying. It's a peaceful democracy with lots of resources and famously nice people. It shares our climate, culture, and would you believe it? Their official languages are French and English, just like us. There's only one problem. This country imposes massive trade barriers on us that cost about $5,100 per person. So which country is it that we should be pursuing as our new top trading partner? Switzerland? France? No. Our new top trading partner will be Canada. But don't we already have free trade with ourselves? Nope. It's actually easier for our businesses to sell to other countries than to other Canadian provinces. Trade barriers between Canadian provinces are actually more costly than trade barriers between Canada and other nations. The result is that we now trade more with the rest of the world than we trade with ourselves. In 2023, international trade was worth 66% of our GDP, while interprovincial trade was only worth 36%. That makes no sense. Economist Trevor Tomb estimated that eliminating all interprovincial trade barriers would boost Canada's economy by as much as 7.9% and generate an economic boost of $200 billion per year, or $5,100 per person. In 2022, Canadian provinces and territories sold nearly
cut this one. It goes on for 7 minutes. I mean, it's really informative and it's great to know. But I think that the Trump tariffs have really, again, shone a light on all of these things. For people who didn't know previously that there are interprovincial trade barriers on industry, promoting and prompting that business to exit the country instead of staying and working within. This has really acted as a catalyst to drive that potential big change for the betterment of, what these so-called leaders are calling the Team Canada approach. If we are going to go with a Team Canada approach, then we should be prioritizing how we become more independent and utilize that things like our vast natural resources and our energy sector to benefit the country as a whole. So I think this has really served as a way to expose the not only the interprovincial, but the international trade market, and how maybe it's not actually working to serve Canadians the best.
Yeah, and this is something that the provincial government in Alberta has been working on for a very long time. It sort of started with a few legal battles with interprovincial trade on liquor, because like inbound liquor, they were tariffing. Other provinces are tariffing outbound liquor. And isn't that the point of confederation? Like, why are we a country then if we have these inbound trade disagreements? Isn't that why you join a country, is so you can just go, or we can work collectively with each other? But along the way, really from the very beginning, these trade barriers went up. Daniel Smith says, did you know it's easier for Canadian provinces to trade with European countries than with each other? This is true. And I've got some numbers on this. It's time Canada eliminates interprovincial trade barriers so that Canadian families, businesses, and our national economy can weather this incoming trade dispute with the United States. I was pulling up some numbers before we came on air. All told, non-geographic internal trade barriers in Canada add up to a tariff equivalent of 21%. That's pretty close to that 25%. And that's the International Monetary Fund estimates that. So this is like an outside looking in. The International Monetary Fund says the benefits of removing these internal trade barriers would be huge. It estimates that if trade in goods was fully liberalized, real gross domestic product per capita would increase by 4% nationally, with the internal trade volumes rising to the level of Canada's internal trade. Labor mobility would increase, boosting employment in the Atlantic provinces by 6%. It would take a big chunk out of the unemployment rate there. Removing trade barriers would also boost international trade by providing easier access to the entire Canadian market. This is something that the CFIB has been talking about forever and ever. Over the decades, because of these internal trade barriers, companies have just given up with trying to access other markets inside the country. So over the decades, interprovincial trade has declined relative to international trade from 50% to 40%. So companies are just saying, you know what, it doesn't even matter. I'm not even going to bother trying to sell into Saskatchewan because I can't. I'll just sell to the Montanans.
Yeah, exactly. And you have Danielle Smith here, who has just completely bypassed the media and kind of became the media on her own right. And she's posted an op-ed here in the National Post where she says how Team Canada can overcome Trump tariffs. So in addition to highlighting those interprovincial barriers and the interprovincial trade issues, she has taken here to the National Post, where I think it's about a third of the way down the page. She said, although I appreciate the need for this proportionate response, which are, you know, the retaliatory tariff measures that are being taken by the Team Canada approach, she says a tariff war with the United States will hurt millions of Canadian families, workers, and businesses. As Premier of Alberta, I am calling on my fellow premiers, the Prime Minister, as he stands currently, I suppose, and all of our national leaders to de-escalate the rhetoric as much as possible and look to diplomacy and advocacy as our primary tool to resolve this conflict. And then later on, she says that's why she's planning to return to Washington, D.C. twice more this month to participate in the Republican Governors Convention, visit with dozens of elected and administrative officials. Well, she'll never stop telling Alberta and Canada's story to their friends and allies south of the border. And also she says this calm, logical discussion is far more effective than tough guy rhetoric when dealing with a misguided ally who has wronged us. And, you know, it's quite the essay for anybody who wants to go in and read it all. But I mean, yeah, let's let cooler heads prevail. Stop escalating this tension with our closest ally and trade partner and figure out what's going to work. I mean, if Mexico can do it, why in the heck can't we?
Right. Well, it has to do with Mexico having 10,000 deployment ready soldiers. And I'm quite certain we don't have that, and that it should hang around Justin Trudeau's neck like a millstone. But yeah, Danielle Smith also says, I encourage all elected Canadian leaders to do the same, to tell your stories, to reach out to the other side. Instead, Justin Trudeau is dividing Canadians. He's dividing us from our American friends and allies. Danielle Smith says the Canadian-U.S. friendship with the American people is far more important and enduring than any one person. We would do well to remember that. Yes. But again, we're led by leaders and that are idiots, and here we are.
And then we have another video here from Poilievre saying that he will continue to march forward as proud Canadians. The thing with some of these videos that are being put out is that this is changing so quickly that you see pretty much almost in real time a lot of these videos and clips going stale, but also as things change, you know, just this morning, as Mexico and the US reach a negotiation deal and the tariffs are paused for a month because of the actions they are immediately taking to secure the border and stop the crossing of illegal fentanyl just in general into the US. You see now Poilievre comes out with that, you know, leaning more on the Alberta model. And so some of these clips already, I'm wondering if they're already getting stale after these leaders have seen the way that things have unfolded in the Mexico relationship. So maybe in that regard, I'll skip over that video, and I'd like to throw to this one by Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe, who has been really the only one to back Smith. It took him about a week or two to get his bearings.
Got there.
Yeah, he eventually came around. He did sign on with the Team Canada stuff, but then I think he saw Smith stick her neck out and take a different path, and he came around. So we have this small clip from him just this morning.
No one wants to be in the situation that we currently find ourselves. Likely the most challenging situation in recent history, and certainly may well be one of the most challenging situations that we've seen since we've last been involved in any actual wartime conflict. This is going to have an impact on our agricultural producers up and down the supply chain in the ag industry in Saskatchewan. It will have an impact on our miners up and down the supply chain as well, all of those involved in the mining industry, whatever the product might be, our oil and energy workers, as well as our retailers in our urban centers and in our communities across this province. This will have an impact, and I would implore on our federal government to work alongside the provinces, as they have been, but to ensure they are always looking at options like we saw in Mexico this morning to have these tariffs removed, if it even is for a short period of time, so that we can further our engagement and further the integration and further the opportunity that we have to implore on one individual, President Trump, that seems bent on using these tariffs in some way, shape, or form to destabilize the investment environment that we have in North America, to destabilize the energy and food security that we have been able to acquire in North America over the course of the last number of decades and maybe even the century, and the significant role that Saskatchewan plays in this. And again, I would just say that everything that we do as leaders, political leaders, business leaders, community leaders, needs to be focused on the long term. It needs to be focused on de-escalating the conversation around imposing tariffs on one another, de-escalating the conversation around harmfully reducing the opportunity that we have in that strong, growing, and vibrant North American economy, and focusing on ensuring that these tariffs are removed as soon as possible, like it appears they may have been for a period of time in Mexico this morning. So.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about Scott Moe's comments are that Trudeau is directly responsible for destabilizing investment in this country with their woke, DEI, energy, sustainability, sustainable development goal aligning strategies and policies. That has driven investment and innovation out of this country, not what Trump is doing. I would argue that what Trump is doing is simply shining a light on it. And unfortunately, until our political leaders get a grip and realize that Canadians have been calling on them to do all of the things that Trump is also asking them to do with these tariffs, we're kind of the ones who will suffer the most consequences. And it's really sad for the Canadian people, I think. And as Trump mentioned in one of those earlier clips, you know, I like the Canadian people, but I don't agree with the leadership. And I am all here for that.
You know what? If I were Scott Moe, my next phone call, and my first phone call would be to Danielle Smith to say, hey, when you're in Washington, can I come? And can we together meet Brooke Rollins? Now, Brooke Rollins is a Trump's pick for Ag Secretary, head of the USDA, and he should go there and make the case on behalf of the Canadian potash industry. Now, Saskatchewan is the #1 potash producer in the world, and the other countries of the world have some serious human rights problems. If you are going to up the cost of Canadian potash, that'll send you into the arms of Russia. Now, Canada produces more than double what Russia produces in potash per year. So that should tell you how much potash we have and how important the potash industry is in Saskatchewan, not just to Canadian agriculture, but to the stability of the food chain around the world. Because if you don't get it from Canada, you're getting it from Russia, then China, then Belarus. So the top, Germany comes in with like a fraction as number 5. So of the top 4 of them are kind of not great on the human rights issue. And then there's us in Saskatchewan being some of the friendliest people on the planet. So Brooke Rollins is the USDA secretary. Scott Moe should be meeting with her and saying, look, these tariffs are going to increase the cost of the inputs for the American farmer. And the American farmer is either going to have to eat that cost, which a lot of times you have to, because you take your price from the world market, you don't set it. So it's going to make farmers poorer if their input costs grow up, or in some instances, that cost will be passed along down to the consumer. So you're going to have poor people in the United States facing food insecurity because you are adding a 25% tariff to our potash. So for our sake and for the sake of the American people, let's drop the potash tariff. That's, if I were Scott Moe, that's the first thing I would be doing, like today. Call Danielle Smith, say, you're going to talk to the governors, I'm going to. Let's talk to Brooke Rollins and let's see what we can do to plead our case. Do not leave this up to the Trudeau government because they don't know anything about farmers.
Absolute disaster. Yeah, like why? Let's focus on building that relationship and building that rapport, and moving forward as renewed allies and a united front. But President Trump, as we see, pretty much in real time. I think this was about 10 minutes ago. His communications advisor in the White House posted this 40-second clip of him still saying and wanting Canada to become the 51st state.
Look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state. We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They could do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy.
Don't.
So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need that. As a state, it's different. Look.
I don't know. I think that Trump also sees a vast resource land here in Canada, and he's definitely downplaying the amount that Americans, as you've already pointed out, Sheila, the amount of oil and gas that Americans and energy Americans do rely on. And I think he sees that we are just a vast land of pretty much untouched natural resources. And so Trump is a businessman. He's thinking about this from a purely business, monetary, what is best to capitalize on Canada as a country. And so, I take that 51st state with a massive grain of salt. I'm not saying that, hey, we can't have a conversation of how the countries can work together and build a more robust, united front, maybe, a North American strategy between, that was supposed to be kind of the whole point of the USMCA, that trade deal that was negotiated back in 2020. And so I think that there is definitely a lot of space there to have renewed discussion and build that relationship back to where it was. But this nonsense of hitting back with dollar for dollar tariffs and escalating these tensions is not it. This is not a Team Canada approach, no matter how many times they try to throw that verbiage out there. This is going to hurt Canadians. And I think the more Trump kind of trolls Canada, as though we will eventually become the 51st state, I mean, that would be massive. Just even think about it logically. Canada would have to be broken up into multiple little states if that were to ever come to fruition. And our
don't take
videographer,
this the wrong way. Don't take this the wrong way, but I don't want to be in a state with Ontario. Like,
that's just it. Yeah, we're too vast to be just one state lumped in together. I think Sydney Fassard, our videographer, did a fun little streeter video where he asked Albertans, would you want Alberta to be the 51st state? And so that was lots of fun to see.
We're pretty
the general
receptive.
Feedback. Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of Canadians are. I mean, our economy is not doing well. We, as a country, the polling numbers indicate that people despise the Justin Trudeau Liberals.
Yeah.
Any of the runner-ups are equally as despised as Justin Trudeau himself. And we are desperate for a change. And so when you have Canadians suffering, and even things like, okay, we have the tariffs coming in. We also have, as you've mentioned, the increase in the carbon tax coming up on April the 1st. And Canadians are already paying more in taxes than all of their basic necessities combined. This is unprecedented levels of taxation that the Canadian people are living under the thumb of. And so when you have people who are so desperate, who feel so slighted and sidelined by their government, well, then you have the ears of those people to see what can change. And so I think Trump has, he sees all of that.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, we've been living that vibe, as they say, for quite a long time. So that's why we will be, of course, more receptive to that rhetoric. But yeah, we've got so many resources that our government insists on just stranding stranding the asset, which is crazy. I mean, we've got 800 years of the world's cleanest burning coal in Alberta. We can't use it. We can't get pipelines built. We can't get energy approvals. They've slapped an emissions cap on us. And then Justin Trudeau pleads the case of reliable Canadian energy to Donald Trump. And it's like, excuse me? Who do you think you are? You've badmouthed our oil and gas for the 9 years that you've been in office. And before that, you've enabled everything to strand the asset. And then you say to the Americans, well, you can't tariff us. We've got the energy that you need. Yeah, no, we do. And we would love to have sold them more, but you won't let us. We've got a couple of chats here and a quick ad read. And then I think maybe we should get into some of the dumber things that suggested by the premiers, because I think like maple syrup in your shopping cart, those selfies are going to be the new vaccine Band-Aid selfie. Like already that nonsense is trotting out that you're just a frontline soldier in the war on Trump by buying French's mustard or something. So we've got a couple of chats here. We've got one from Alberta Dawn, regular viewer of the show, regular supporter, gives us $5 and says, Trudeau talks about our critical minerals. How long does, thank you, exactly. How long does it take for a mine approval? Does Trudeau and Ford know the U.S. does not force automakers to produce EVs anymore? Yeah, exactly. They don't need as many of our critical minerals as Justin Trudeau seems to think they do. And actually, they can get them from China because they've only tariffed China at 10%. And I think we had another one. Oh, Billy Howard says, Trump will be praised for his push for Canadian democracy if he told Justin Trudeau to call an election now or face tariffs, because he became a dictator for suspending Parliament to avoid the January 27th non-confidence vote. Yes and no. Now, that feels a little foreign interference-y, and I think that's why why Trump's not saying that. I think maybe Trump is trying to push public sentiment in that way, but at the same time, we couldn't dislike Trudeau more in many parts of this country, and it's really, I guess, just up to Jagmeet Singh what we do. Go ahead, Tamara, if you have something to add.
Jagmeet Singh, who I'm not confident that he would have called a January 27th non-confidence vote. You see,
I still don't think he will.
Yeah, and he said that. He has come out and said that he would not support a non-confidence vote. The fourth non-confidence vote in as many months in December literally used his own words. They verbatim took what Jagmeet Singh said about the Liberals and put it into the Conservatives put it into a non-confidence motion, and it didn't pass. So I think that speaks for itself, whether or not Jagmeet Singh is going to support a non-confidence vote. You can put them forward as much as you want, but so long as there's that fringe minority Liberal NDP coalition propping up the democracy in our country, which I would say is in and of itself inherently anti-democracy, we're all hostage to their fringe views. And that's the state of affairs in Canada when we actually have a functioning parliament, which as it stands right now, we don't.
And ask yourself, imagine what Canada could be if we had a leader who cared as much about growing and protecting our economy as Trump does for his. You know, we've had nothing but 10 years of self-sabotage to please the globalists. Really. Imagine if we had somebody who worked as hard as Daniel Smith did to save the economy of Alberta. Just someone who is willing to say, like, look, I'm going to go there. I'm going to talk to these people. I'm going to talk to them. I'm going to plead the case. I'm going to put my face in front of it. And what I really like is that when the media called her a traitor, when the Liberals called her a traitor, when her fellow Conservatives, Doug Ford, called her a traitor, she never bent, not even once. She just did not care because Albertans elected her to stick up for her jobs or for our jobs, and that's what she did. We've got one more quick ad read, and then we'll go into what David Eby's doing. What a joke. And then Doug Ford taking booze that's already paid for off the shelf. So this one is from Patriot Addict. Folks, Trump is back in office, and it's only going to get better from here. for the Americans. As a celebration, Patriot Addict is sending our free Trump red knives to people who voted for Trump. This is just a way of saying thank you for supporting him and being part of this moment in history. Normally, this knife retails for $100, but right now you can grab it for just the cost of shipping. Scan the QR code to the right to apply your 100% off coupon code and claim your Trump knife today. Man, I love a good jackknife. I do. So good luck to you people on gathering those up. Tamara, I'll let you pick which one goes first. We want EB or Ford.
Yeah, well, we chatted about Ford a little bit at the beginning, so maybe let's go into Ford, and then we'll talk about the British Columbia's Premier David Eby with his emotional rhetoric.
Oh, God, he's gross.
We have a clip here from Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, from this morning, so let's roll with that one.
Tomorrow, the LCBO, which sells nearly $1 billion worth of American beer, wine, spirits, and seltzers every year, will remove all U.S. products from its shelves and wholesale catalog. Starting today and until U.S. tariffs are removed, Ontario is banning American companies from provincial contracts. Every year, the Ontario government and its agencies spend $30 billion in procurement, alongside our $200 billion plan to build Ontario. And I'm urging all 444 municipalities to do the same. US-based businesses will now lose out on tens of billions of dollars in new revenues. They only have President Trump to blame. We've gone one step further. We'll be ripping up our contract with Elon Musk's Starlink. Ontario won't do business with people hell-bent on destroying our economy. Friends, there's no sugarcoating it. The coming days and weeks will be incredibly difficult. Trump's tariffs are going to devastate our economy. These tariffs will put up to 450,000 jobs at risk from every sector in every region. No one will be immune. Everyone will feel the impact.
Yeah, I remember when Doug Ford, the last time he called everyone friends, which was when he was rolling out COVID pandemic relief like it was candy and printing money with the help of the federal government, of course, to offer everyone all of this relief. And don't worry, stay home, save lives. Your business will be okay. Just shutter it. It's only 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And they're rolling out and starting to implement these exact same pandemic relief style supplements, which is just going to make inflation even worse than it already is. Instead of securing the border and getting the drugs off of our streets, we're going to just print money to try to deal with the tariffs and counter them and escalate those tensions with the US. It does logically, again, it just doesn't make sense why we can't secure the border, get the drugs off of the street, do what Danielle Smith has stuck her neck out to do, which is facilitate that diplomatic relationship and implement what Canadians want for that province. Why doesn't Team Canada do that on a more Canada broad scale instead of putting us into even more economic hardship? Basically, I think until Canadians are at the government's doorstep begging for universal basic income, because what they're going to do with this pandemic style relief, as they call it, it's just inflationary spending. It's just money printing. It's all fake. And we will become so devastated and reliant on government handouts that people will be begging, just bring in UBI, please. We'll take it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to be petty here, just out of the corner of my eye. I was like, how is it possible that Doug Ford looks like both Wyerton Willie and the guy who holds up Wyerton Willie and says the groundhog has decided? I don't know how that happened, but Doug Ford said he's going to cut off contracts with Starlink, and I was like, man, how serious is he about not doing business with Elon Musk? So then I went over and I read the announcement over on X. And I'm like, not all that serious, are you, Doug? Because it was like he makes his announcement to not do business with Starlink, and he tweeted it from his X blue checkmark account. So he has no problem paying Elon that way, just not the other way.
Oh, the
on.
irony. And we have, I guess the polling numbers must be in because Pierre Poilievre we've just clipped another video from him where he is slamming the Liberals for
Good.
losing control over the border and implementing a radical, borderless, globalist, post-national agenda. Let's play this little 45-second clip.
Nice.
Borders. They are the protective arms wrapped around our people and our land to stop foreign threats and protect against enemies. They mark our place and stake out our ground as a people and country. But in 9 years, the NDP Liberals have lost control of our borders, letting drugs, guns, and terrorists threaten our people. Part is incompetence, but part is the radical Liberal agenda, a borderless, globalist, post-national agenda. Post-national is the word that Justin Trudeau used. All of this done with the advice and support of his top economic advisor, Mark Carney, who calls himself a European.
Yeah.
So looks like Poilievre's maybe growing a backbone.
You know what? The deal with Mexico, I think, is the real turd in the punch bowl right now for the Liberals' Team Canada approach, because it shows that even a country that Trump, I think to some extent, literally campaigned against Mexico. And he was able to cut a deal with them to stave off the tariffs. It shows, again, how poisonous the relationship is with the Trudeau Liberals and how this would not be happening to us were it not for the Trudeau Liberals' approach to this problem. So good. You know, it's nice to see. By the way, I have a tough time being told that I need to get on board with the Team Canada approach by people who arrested people for waving Canadian flags in the nation's capital. Sorry, I'm having a tough time squaring that circle these days.
You know, froze their bank accounts and ushered in martial law against their own peacefully assembling citizens to quash a grassroots civil rights movement against this very government. Yeah, who claims now we're all about Team Canada. Really, really bizarre handling of our government. And again, Canadians have been trying to say this, and they've been voicing these concerns that have repeatedly fallen on deaf ears for several years now. And it's really come to a peak now since COVID and the handling of COVID. And now we have another president coming in and shining that light on even more than it already was. And so on the more global scale, again, this is all being revealed. I think we just have time here for one more, EB. This is the British Columbia Premier with his far left NDP rhetoric on the tariffs.
Today we're at a crossroad, and the journey ahead won't be easy, but there is no place on earth I would rather be to face this threat than right here in British Columbia. We have everything we need to succeed. Abundant natural wealth and clean, cheap energy, a diversified economy and access to global markets. And our most important resource of all, you, the people who call this beautiful place home. British Columbians are hardworking, highly skilled, and resilient. Through this uncertainty, our government will be there to stand up for you and your family. As proud British Columbians and Canadians, we will meet this moment together and come out stronger on the other side. Together we'll fight, not fold. Be resolute, not roll over, because that's just who we are. Here in the true North, strong and free.
Okay, so he announced that he is banning products or tariffing products. I forget how it went. Oh, banning liquor from red states, from Republican-run states, but not from Democrat-run states. And I don't know why he's pulling U.S. liquor off the shelves, but he said it was red states, which is ridiculous. But maybe this is his response to conservative Alberta avoiding the worst of the tariffs. So he was like, I'll show you guys, I'll punish the Republicans. I don't know. This is just one of the dumbest, most politically driven stunts that we've seen in this very early NDP government in British Columbia.
Yeah, exactly. And as Drea's already pointed out, won by a smidgen of a hair.
Just
And how
like
much,
yeah.
yeah, with some potential discrepancies involved there. We have to be careful what we say on YouTube, but you can find all of her reports if you want to look a little bit more into what happened in the BC election last fall. What a difference it would have been if, why can't I think of his name right now? The Conservative.
John Rustad.
Thank you. Yeah, if he had have won the provincial election, and then you would have BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan banding together, having this diplomatic relationship, mending ties, and what a difference that would maybe make for the real Canadians, actual Team Canada, who has wanted to see these measures implemented far before Trump ever threatened tariffs to do so.
Before we go, I know we're done, and I know we're over time, and we both have important jobs at the company. So to take us both out of the company just to be on the live stream for a bit is a little bit inconvenient for everybody who relies on us to approve things. But Elon Musk has responded to Doug Ford.
Oh no!
And this is what he says. Can we bring that up? I was in News Jacks in the Slack channel. Did you find it?
He's a really good troll.
Yeah. So to be clear, the Ontario government had $100 million contract ahead of Starlink or with Starlink. And that's what they're canceling. And so what does that mean for everybody else? But Elon Musk, oh well. Like the guy had nearly $50 billion of just mad money to spend on a failing company called Twitter because he believed in free speech. He was just willing to just throw it out there. Do you think he cares about your $100 million contract, Doug Ford? Looks like he doesn't. So I don't know. Good stunt though, bro.
Also, what does ripping up $100 million contract really mean? Are we still paying and we just don't go through with the deal, or what happens there? Because if it was a contract, then there must be stipulations in there for payment. So yeah, it's still going through, but we're just going with the optics of how it looks to rip it up, or what's really happening.
Also, what does this mean for the 10,000 rural people?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, like Starlink literally changed my life when it comes to work. I would have to get up even earlier than I do, and I'm a farmer. So that I could get my work done so that I wasn't competing with video upload speeds. If you remember the olden days of the live stream, I would just disappear, pixelate and disappear because my internet would blow in on the wind and then blow away, or however the internet works. But Starlink is strong and reliable, and I probably just jinxed it like calling a shutout. But for rural people, it is a game changer. I don't have landlines into my house. There's no hope in hell of ever getting fiber optics past the door. Like, it's not coming. My house was built without the connection. It's a log house in the middle of nowhere. So this, Doug Ford, good job. You're punishing the rural people now too. So with your tariffs, which punish consumers, now you're punishing rural people. Great work, Dougie.
It's just also another very clear example of flip-flop Ford. On January 24th, I just posted this in the live stream chat. On January 24th, he explicitly stated that he won't scrap the Starlink deal over the tariff spat. He defends his decision, arguing that no other companies could handle the infrastructure, given that Starlink is the largest satellite provider globally. And this comes after Ontario actually paid, I think it was Telesat, for a deal to deliver Canadian-owned satellite internet. And I don't even remember how many years. I think it has been
10.
At least is it 10? It's been at least a few years.
It's supposed to be 10. It's supposed to be like the length of to get it up and running. It's already been a few years. I think it's supposed to be 10 years out.
Yeah, but they've done nothing. And
Nothing. No.
despite getting billions of dollars dedicated to building this infrastructure, they have done nothing. And so, ironically, it's called light speed, but it's traveling at the speed of a snail. And so, the Elon Musk Starlink deal was replacing this nonsense with light speed that is not delivering any sort of speed, let alone the speed of light. And now Flip Flop Ford has reneged on all of that. So who knows what Ford will even end up doing? Who knows whether or not he'll get a renewed mandate at this point? He's not even really the premier. He is now a candidate because we're in the middle of a provincial election. So what Ford does is anyone's guess because he just flip-flops all over the place.
These people are absolutely insufferable. It's just, everybody is just, like I said, maple syrup is going to be the new vaccine selfie. And people who ate at Harvey's today are going to be scolding you for eating at McDonald's. It's just more division. And at the end of the day, it's the consumer and the normal people who suffer while they try to advance their political fortunes on the backs of Canadians. That's the only reason the Liberals are doing this, because they're plummeting in the polls. They can't campaign against Poilievre, so they got to campaign against Trump, and they're going to be the saviors of Canada from Trump instead of the people who led us as lambs to slaughter in a trade and tariff war. Are we done? Are we all wrapped up? I think that's all the clips that we're going to get to today. Do we have any chats left or no?
I don't see any left.
Okay, we'll wrap up.
I think that we're done.
Okay, great. Tamara, thanks for subbing in for David Menzies as he's got a couple of weeks off. Let's all get back to work. Thanks, Olivia, for running the show for us. Thanks to everybody at home who watches the show. Thank you to those of you who pitch in a little bit with your Rumble rants, but also to those of you who did the free work of just sharing the stream to other people. We appreciate that so much. We'll see everybody back here with, I believe it's Lise on Wednesday. And as my friend David Menzies always says, stay safe and stay sane.
I will take back control of Canada's borders. My common sense, Canada First plan should immediately be adopted by Parliament. We must recall Parliament now and put Liberal Party power struggles aside so that we can adopt this plan to save our people and secure our borders. The plan: immediately deploy military troops, helicopters, and surveillance to the border to spot and intercept risks. As the recent remarks by the Canadian Forces Chief of the Defence Staff, General Jenny Kerrigan, offered earlier this month, we can deploy military assets into the sky, whether helicopters or other surveillance tools, and we should do so. In fact, we should have done so long ago. 2, expand the powers of CBSA border agents to patrol everywhere along the border, not just at official border crossings. 3, hire 2,000, at least 2,000 new CBSA agents to intercept illegal crossers, drugs, guns, and other dangerous law breaking. 4, install high-powered scanners at all major land crossings and shipping ports. These scanners can see through the walls of containers and vehicles to spot drugs, guns, and stolen cars. 5, build border surveillance towers that we can deploy on and use to scan the landscape and detect incursions. Also, deploy truck-mounted drone systems that can spot incursions from the sky. 6, track departures. We should keep track of who's leaving so that we know which deportees are still in our country. As I said at the outset, the government amazingly doesn't know how many people are here illegally. How are we supposed to protect our borders when there could be over 500,000 people inside those borders illegally, according to the government's own admissions?